So basics, let's go to some basics. Customer has some expectations and he always wants best quality, cost, faster delivery, and right service. So this is fundamental. We all know this. But the customer's need is addressed by organization. The organizations put money, material, man, people, machines, methods, measurements, whatever, to make sure that need is addressed, and they have the processes which consist of activities. They have processes which consist of activities that will produce a product or service. And that will cater to customer needs. If this is clear, type SC, super clear in the comment box. This is very, very basic, right? From there, we will start building and ensure how organizations should go in depth to identify what activities come in the way of the customer requirements. So we should ask this question, who is customer and what is customer value? Let us ask some important questions. Whom are we working for, internal or external? Is customer willing to pay for my activity? Who is the ultimate beneficiary of the product or service we are delivering? And what is value in the eyes of the customer? Okay. Now, when we are talking about customer value, first we need to be very clear. Whom are we working for, internal customer or external customer? So when we divide into process by process, in many companies, we don't treat the next process as a customer. We treat them as our pain area. Okay, that guy is always demanding something. Or the person who gives us the material, we don't treat him as a supplier. We always treat him like, somebody who is external. We operate in silos. We operate in pockets. We build big bridges, build walls. Okay. I call that as, we call ourselves islands of excellence. Okay. We say that our finance department is great, our production department is great, our HR department is great, and these become like islands of excellence. But we fail to, bridge these gaps, break these silos, and try to ask, okay, and don't try to ask who is our supplier, internal supplier, and who is our internal customer. And everybody starts thinking next process as a customer. Then they will start thinking what is the value that he is expecting. And if I treat him as a customer, how do I attend to his value? All right. So if this is clear, type clear in the comment box, because I have shared with you something very, very fundamental of lean thinking. Okay, let's go into the next thing. We'll go a little bit deeper into this. I'm taking step by step, okay? Step by step. So activities, we said it consists of people, machine, materials, and veterans here will add another 3M, 4M, 5M, and all that stuff, okay? But I want to keep it simple. That's why I've just left with a few. Input, process, and output. We all know this. And for these activities, we use people, we use machines, we use materials, and follow a method. To do that, that method, I put it as activities here. But then in lean, we try to find out value-adding activity, incidental but essential activity, and non-value-adding activity. Value-adding green, incidental but essential is orange, and non-value-adding pure waste is red. And this orange we call value enabling activity, because those are the activities without which we might produce a greater waste. Please always remember, without which we might produce a greater waste. For example, training. Customer is not willing to pay for my training. Customer is not willing to pay for my auditing. Customer is not willing to pay for my inspection. But I have to decide how much training is needed, how much auditing is needed, how much inspection is needed to make sure my costs are low. At the same time, I do not produce a defective piece. Okay. If this is clear, type clear. This is very important thing. So value adding. There is some definition of value adding that I'm going to present here. People who have already attended, they know this very well. Any activity that physically changes the shape, size, or properties. For example, stitching in garment industry, stitching. Stitching is value VA or not? Because stitching physically changes the shape and size, right? And if I add sugar into the coffee, okay, is it value adding or not? Though it doesn't change the shape and size, but it changes the property of the coffee, right? So those are the things which physically changes the form, fit, or function. All of you can type 3F in the comment box, okay? Form, fit, and function. That's one way of remembering, okay? That's one way of remembering. Since we are all lean doctors, we want to remember in various ways. Shape, size, or properties, or form, fit, or function. Okay, this form, fit, or function is something that I use quite often, okay? Because of 3F, remember. This can be a quiz question, okay? What is 3F in the context of deciding what is value adding activity or a criteria for value adding activity? What does 3F means? You can give form, fit, and function as one answer and rest of the things as others, you know. So if it is noted, Sandeep Ji, you can say noted, okay? Do it right the first time. Do it right the first time. The reason this condition is put is, for example, if you change form, fit, or function, for example, somebody says, I put 2 spoons of sugar and it's now too sweet. It's value adding because it's changed the function. Now the customer rejects it because it's too sweet. What do you do naturally? Add more milk and again decoction to ensure that you adjust to that. So it was not done right the first time. The second time, if you do adjustment, that means it is a non-value adding activity. Rework. Rework is a non-value adding activity. You cannot say that it's done right the first time. I've seen people, what do you say, try to fit some assembly parts and they'll have to do something and do the assembly. Okay. But then they try to tap and find out, slowly tap and find out whether it is matching or not. So that is rework. And of course, desired by the customer. Desired by the customer, or the customer should be willing to pay for it. Okay. For example, value adding activity, let's say you're given a car for service and that person has in front of your mirror, he has hung something like this, a cardboard, and it's actually perfume dipped cardboard, okay? And the entire car is filled with fragrance. The entire car is filled with fragrance. And you open the car, it's neat and clean, and you get a fantastic fragrance. Okay. So the activity of hanging this cardboard with fragrance in the mirror or someplace, is it value adding or not value adding activity? Please leave your thoughts in the comment box. We say if it is value adding because it changes. Let's see the conditions now. Okay. Change the shape, size, or properties or form, fit, or function. Now, it doesn't change the shape of my car, this activity. It doesn't change the size of my car, but the properties inside my car has changed, which means I'm having a pleasant fragrance. That's something that has changed. So one condition is satisfied. Okay. The second condition, doing it right the first time. So he has put the right perfume there, okay, which I like. I mean, you didn't have to tell him that, no, you have hung in the wrong place or the perfume is headache, everything. So he has done right the first time. The third thing is desired by the customer. So do you really like the fragrance? Yes or no? Do you really like the fragrance? How many of you like the fragrance in your car? Okay. Now, if you like it, suppose if you says that I will charge you $100 for this or $1,000 for this, do you still call it as a value adding activity? Mr. Kenneth, sir, suppose I charge you $1,000 for this, hanging this. Are you willing to pay? Does that activity add value? That's too much, right? So the point that we are trying to come in, I exaggerated 1,000 because I wanted to take a decision. Okay. The point here is I'm not willing to pay. I don't want you to do this activity of spraying perfume in the car. Okay. Spraying perfume in the car. Suppose if you're doing it as a free service, it's okay. All right. Okay. If this is clear, type super clear in the comment box, because many of the activities we have to understand, okay, whether the customer is willing to pay for it or not. If the customer is not willing to pay for some of the activities, it doesn't qualify for value adding. So I would like to insist this slide one more time, that three conditions have to be passed at the same time. Okay, three conditions have to be satisfied. Even if one condition is not satisfied, it's called non-value adding activity. So allow that activity to pass these three conditions by asking the question yourself and then qualify based on the output. Make sure all these three conditions get a tick mark before you qualify that as value adding activity. So you're making some biscuits and you're giving training to people on how to bake biscuits in the oven. Okay, is that training? Okay, but not to the customer. There is nothing to do with an individual. Everything should be looked from customer perspective only. We cannot decide value adding or non-value adding from any of the individual perspectives. So this is the point that I was trying to communicate. You have to see from the eyes of the customer, and so from the eyes of the customer, training is not value adding. And that is why we have an in-between category called value enabling activity. Okay, I hope this is super clear. Okay, this is the place where there is a lot of debate, discussions in lean, and people don't agree. And later on, we will realize that as mature lean professionals, it's not the question of where we slot them, but if we always look at from the eyes of the customer and decide based on this condition, it's easy for us to identify, and then we will start thinking what to do with this, whether we can eliminate this completely or whether we can reduce this non-value adding activity, or we have to live with those activities in the current situations. Okay, just because customer is willing to pay does not mean customer wants to pay. I mean, customer likes to pay. Okay, he might not have, like you rightly said, today you don't have options. That just because customer is paying now doesn't mean he's desiring, he's wanting to pay. He doesn't have an option. That's why he's paying. I know a company where, there are a lot of rejections going out, and the customer insisted you put somebody at your place only because when it comes to our place, I need to put some employees to really qualify these products, segregate, and send you back. And there is a lot of transportation cost that is happening because if I segregate and send it to you back, it incurs a lot of money for you. Instead of that, you put your place and segregate and send it so that it can save at least the logistic cost. Okay, and the customer said that I am willing to pay for that. That doesn't mean that it's a value adding activity. Today he is paying because he has no options. Okay, so rest all are non-value adding activities. Let's go. Now I request all of you to go through this slide in detail. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to describe an activity, what is currently in your organization, and you need to qualify that like this. Suppose, what is that activity which changes the shape, which is done right first time, but customer is not willing to pay? Okay, describe another activity and said, what is that activity which changes shape, size, and properties, but it's not done right the first time and customer is willing to pay? What is that activity in your organization which changes shape and size, but it's not done right the first time, nor the customer is willing to pay? What is that activity which doesn't change the shape, size, or properties, but it is done right the first time and customer is not willing to pay? What is that activity where it might be the activity what you write might be from your own example or any example that you can think of, okay? What is that activity which doesn't change shape, size, or properties, which is not done right the first time, but the customer is willing to pay? Is there any activity like this? Okay. This is a very interesting point, okay? This one where it doesn't change the shape, size, properties done right the first time, but customer is willing to pay, okay? What is that activity? Because customer is left with no options, he has to pay you. So that is why he is paying in this case, okay? What is that activity where it doesn't change the shape, it's done right the first time, and customer is willing to pay, and so on and so forth, okay? Is there any activity customer is not willing to pay, it is not done right the first time, and doesn't change? And what is that? This is an easier thing to action. What is that activity where it changes the shape, size, and it is done right the first time, and customer is willing to pay? Okay. And how many of you will attempt this sheet? So that in describe the activity, you need to type the name of that activity. How many of you can make the attempt? Service organization, it is difficult, but I will try. In fact, service organization is the easiest. Even if you don't try, you can give it. We will have a separate discussion, service organization. Name any organization, tuck, 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 we can identify those activities. Once you write all those activities, then you can start. Yep. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's see the non-value adding activity to value adding ratios. Very small portion is in green, okay? Maybe 5%. In most of the organizations, it is less than 5% value adding. Most of them are non-value adding. And people who are new to this lean and they start thinking from this, they'll be shocked. Hey, do we have 95% of non-value adding activities? I would say a strong yes, yes, yes. Okay. How many times are you waiting and storing? How many times you are collating the information? This is all service, okay? Mr. Sridhar, collating information, storing information, waiting for information, expediting some information. Expediting is counting, preparing for something, searching for something, accumulating something, reviewing something. Okay, this detail is not given in any book, sir. I've tried to, from service organizations, I've tried to pick as much observation as possible. Okay, reviewing, retrieving some information, checking some information, documents, revising some documents, approving some documents. Approving, is it value added activity? Approving some documents, copying some documents, copying, filing things, moving from one place to the other, from one inbox to the other folder, from this folder to that folder, reworking, inspecting. How many of you agree with this? Let's quickly go through this. I would want to reiterate this once again. Waiting or storing, collating, expediting, counting, preparing, searching, accumulating, reviewing, retrieving, checking, revising, approving, copying, filing, moving, reworking, inspecting. So this is 95% of the total activities. A lot of this. So this is interesting, type interesting. So this is where the lean thinkers start thinking. The lean thinkers should start thinking, what is that really qualifies for value adding? Once you get this thinking right, I'm spending little slowly in lean foundations because if you get the thinking right, okay, then the journey towards lean will become more easier. If thinking itself is not corrected, there will be times where you will be forced to change your thinking. How many people can relate to what I'm seeing? If your thinking is wrong and you feel all these things are value adding, there is no option, we will continue this, then there will be circumstance where your customers will start forcing you. Okay, the customer demand will start forcing you to change your way of thinking, and it will be too late, okay, before we can react. Somebody else will take off your business.